This is such a common question. How do you balance perfection versus just getting it done? So, oh my gosh, I have so many things to say about this because I definitely have perfectionist tendencies, as most of us do. And I mean, I remember in the very beginning of my business, this was in the very beginning when I was setting up my first website. I once stayed up until about 4 a.m. trying to adjust a pop-up that I was setting up myself so that the text would be spaced perfectly. And I would move things over like one segment at a time. And I would save it, I would refresh, and before I knew it was 4 a.m. and I'd gotten my pop-up right, but in the grand scheme of things, probably very few people would have noticed if it had been off by a centimeter, which was essentially what was going on. And so I share that to show you I've absolutely been there. However, a few things over the years have really helped me switch out of that. And you have to if you want to succeed in your business. So the first thing to realize is to make it intentional, to build the skill of getting things done quickly and well while not getting stuck trying to make it perfect. You have to be intentional about it. Otherwise, you could spend all day trying to get something better and better and better and perfect and more perfect and do it infinitely. So you have to be intentional about developing. It's essentially a muscle. So that's the first piece. The second piece is setting a bar for what's good enough. So for example, I would never do a video where I got up and started talking and then spent 5 minutes kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I saying? What am I thinking? I just lost my train of thought, right? If I somehow recorded a YouTube video or a course video or anything where it was completely off like that, I would redo it. So you have to understand what is my minimum. You have to set a minimum. Otherwise, you're just going to be setting yourself to an impossible standard. So instead, you want to set a minimum. And so realizing what that is. So for me, in the beginning, I defined a few minimums for all the things that I was doing. If I set a minimum, so if I'm doing social media posts, for example, so in the beginning of my business, it was writing Facebook posts. My minimum would be, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be the wittiest thing, doesn't make sense. Is someone reading it going to say, okay, this was interesting and valuable? I mean, it didn't even have to be that interesting because I was working on my copywriting and social media skills at the time. And so even if it was boring, but someone read it and was like, oh, I learned something, this was good. That was my minimum. So it was a relatively low bar, but I focused on the things that were the most important in the beginning. So I did that. For my website, the minimum was, can someone read this and get a feel for who I am? Are they going to know enough to want to join my email list, to want to work with me? Okay, great. And in the beginning, that minimum was low because I was able then to use headshots, professional headshots I'd gotten like 5 years ago or 10. It was like really old headshots that didn't even look like me at the time, but it was enough. For my first videos, that minimum was really low because I was really resistant to doing video and really unconfident. So that minimum was, can I get on, be semi-coherent and get it out there? That was my minimum. And so I started with those. And each time, when it was time, I raised the minimum. Right. And so as time went on, my minimums raised. And because I had practiced, I'd gotten better and faster at everything, I was able to raise those minimums without having to put in more time. And so that made a massive difference. So setting a minimum versus setting like a maximum, right? Obviously, always aim for the top quality things and do the best that you can. I want to make that very clear. This is not about putting out subpar work. This is about getting it done enough so that you're making forward progress instead of getting stuck in the same thing over and over. The third thing is to let go of your ego. So to not get caught up in, okay, this needs to be perfect because it's for me. And that happens to so many of us because, people are not paying as much attention to you and your things, your content as you would think. And in some ways that sucks because we put so much time and care into our content. But in some ways it's actually really good because that means no one is sitting there nitpicking, oh my gosh, she said twice, or oh my gosh, her hair is out of place, or this wasn't perfect, or whatever you might be criticizing yourself on. And when you realize that, you realize, okay, if I take a step back, think about how you review other people's content. Maybe if you watch someone's YouTube video, you play it in the background and you don't even watch the video, you just listen to what they say while you go and do other things. I know I do that all the time. I have a tendency to play podcasts and YouTube videos in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth and washing my face. And so I'm not watching anything, I'm just listening to it. And so possibly a lot of people do it that way for your content as well. Same thing for your emails or your social media posts. People probably just skim them. They're not analyzing every sentence or word thinking, oh my God, was this the perfect word? And so when you think about that, you realize, okay, that means, yes, I still need to put out the best stuff possible, but I don't need to reread or rewatch something I did 10 times to try and get every single detail perfect, because that's not necessary. All right, so understanding that a lot of that is for you and taking yourself out of it. And what that leads me into is my next tip, which is the flip side of the same thing, which is putting yourselves in the shoes of the person you're creating your content for or doing the things in your business for. Realizing, okay, what is it that's going to make the biggest difference to them? Is it how perfect my video looks, or is it just me getting the content out to them? Right? Are they going to be able to forgive the fact that you have a hair out of place, or that, I don't know, you have some background noise going on? I will tell you, to this day, I very rarely record in a studio. And it's simply because it builds it up in my mind as, oh my gosh, now I have to go and set it up. I have to get my makeup done that day, my hair, blah, blah, blah. And I get in my head and then I put off doing it. Whereas the compromise is I have a really high quality video setup, right? And sometimes it's not soundproof. So you're going to hear sirens in the background and whatever New York noises are going on sometimes. And that's okay, because does it really matter if occasionally you hear a siren, but the content is good and I'm focused, I'm getting it out for you versus putting it off and not getting it done at all. And so you want to be thinking through that way, because I will tell you, I've watched videos where the quality, it was shaky video. I've read PDFs where it was just literally black text on a white paper. I did not care. If the content was good and it helped me, that's what mattered. And so you want to be thinking about, for your audience, what really matters, what's going to create the most value. It's not the trivial things. And yes, there's a time and place for all of that. Absolutely. Do your best, be presentable. Let's be clear. But there is no need to try and get it perfect and perfect and perfect, or hold yourself back from moving forward because you're holding yourself to a standard that no one else is holding you to. So that's how I think through getting it done versus getting stuck in perfectionism.